You look at the digital timestamp on your monitor, watching the seconds tick past midnight as you stare at a heavily redacted PDF that technically does not exist on any public server. Your eyes strain against the harsh glow of the screen, tracking a sequence of alphanumeric codes that were never meant to be cross-referenced by someone sitting alone in a dark bedroom. For decades, you were told that space was a silent, vacuum-sealed void where the only real threat to human life was mechanical failure or solar radiation. But as you scroll deeper into the decrypted metadata of what the agency classified as file UAP N69, a chilling realization begins to take root in your chest. The official history of space exploration is not a timeline of scientific triumphs, but a carefully managed cover story designed to keep humanity from looking too closely at the dark. Imagine an object so massive that its sheer physical presence distorts the localized magnetic field of the moon, yet so perfectly concealed that 50 years of satellite photography have failed to register its existence. You are looking at a mathematical impossibility, an event log from the summer of 1971 that claims 3 highly trained military pilots experienced identical, synchronized auditory hallucinations while passing over the lunar far side. The document describes a repeating pattern of electromagnetic pulses that bypass the command module's shielding entirely, printing directly onto the onboard telemetry tapes as a series of structured, high-density binary code. You begin to realize that the Apollo missions were never just about beating a geopolitical rival to a dead rock in space. They were a frantic, multi-billion-dollar forensic salvage operation disguised as a nationalistic race, and you are holding the receipts. Why would an intelligence organization responsible for terrestrial espionage spend millions of dollars in 1971 to intercept and bury the psychological debriefings of civilian space explorers? You have to ask yourself what kind of discovery possesses the raw disruptive power to collapse the global financial and religious architecture overnight if it were ever leaked. The file hints at an answer that makes your throat dry, a mandate issued under the authority of the National Security Council, ordering the immediate sterilization of all non-public communication loops between Houston and the lunar orbit. You are forced to confront a deeply uncomfortable paradox, because if the anomaly they found out there was just space dust or cosmic static, there would be no logical reason to threat rate it higher than a thermonuclear exchange. The traditional narrative is that space anomalies are just optical illusions, the result of tired eyes playing tricks on men trapped in a metal tin for days on end. But the data in UAP N69 shatters that comfortable lie by introducing an element that completely defies the established laws of orbital mechanics. According to the decrypted sensor logs, when the command module entered the shadow of the moon, the spacecraft's atomic clocks began drifting by a fraction of a millisecond per orbit, a deviation that only occurred when passing over a specific grid coordinate in the Aitken Basin. You realize this means the anomaly was not a passive relic, but an active, localized distortion field that was interacting directly with the ship's navigation computer. The agency did not hide this file to protect secrets. They hid it because the math inside proves we are not the primary tenants of this solar system. As you cross-reference the coordinate markers with modern topographic maps, the narrative takes a sudden, sharp turn into a territory that makes your heart beat against your ribs. You discover that every single space agency on Earth, from Roscosmos to the CNSA, has quietly sent unmanned probes to that exact same coordinate over the last 10 years. All while publicly claiming to investigate water ice. You are looking at a multinational, decades-long silent agreement to observe a phenomenon that our current level of physics cannot even begin to explain. The file details how the astronauts' heart rates spiked in perfect synchronization every time the binary signal cycled, suggesting the transmission wasn't just hitting the ship's instruments, but was actually coupling with the nervous systems of the crew. This is the exact moment where the entire structure of your reality begins to warp, because the implications of UAP N69 do not stop at the edge of the lunar atmosphere. You start to see the domino effect playing out in real time across modern history, noticing how specific breakthroughs in semiconductor technology and fiber optics perfectly mirror the dates when these files were classified. You are living in a world built on top of repurposed architecture, using everyday devices that might be watered-down commercial variations of the very code harvested from that lunar blind spot. It hits you with the weight of a physical blow that your entire digital life, from your bank accounts to the encryption keeping your private messages secure, is fundamentally tied to a truth they locked away in 1971. If you are enjoying this deep dive into the hidden architecture of history, take a second to hit the subscribe button and drop your thoughts in the comments below, because the algorithm actively suppresses investigations that look too closely at these specific declassified files. Your engagement is the only thing that keeps this channel on the air. allowing us to continue pulling back the curtain on data the State Department would prefer stayed buried forever. The deeper you go into the technical appendices of the document, the more terrifying the perspective becomes, forcing you to ask the one question that mainstream researchers refuse to articulate. What if the entity that transmitted that binary sequence isn't an ancient, dead civilization, but something that is still actively waiting out there for us to return? You read through the transcripts of the crew's final physical examinations and noticed that their brainwave patterns never returned to baseline, remaining locked in a permanent high-frequency state that modern neurology associates with profound trauma or profound enlightenment. The script flips entirely when you realize that the CIA didn't seal file UAPN 69 to keep you from knowing what was on the moon. They did it to keep you from realizing what the moon actually is. The ultimate takeaway from this dossier is not a sense of wonder, but a cold, hard lesson about the nature of human power and the lengths to which institutions will go to preserve it. You now understand that our status as a spacefaring species is entirely conditional, allowed only as long as we do not interfere with the systemic operations running silently in the dark spaces between the stars. When you finally close the file and look out your window at the moon hanging silently over the city grid, you will never see it the same way again, knowing that its silver surface is just a mask for an ongoing cosmic reality that we are simply too fragile to survive. The final line of the report remains unredacted, a single devastating sentence that will haunt your thoughts long after this video ends. The signal has changed its frequency, and it is no longer looking towards space, it is looking down at us. You sit in silence as the cooling fans of your computer hum against the stillness of the room, realizing that the document outlines a secondary directive known as Protocol NRO 55. This operational protocol explicitly states that if any civilian astronomer detects the specific 1.42 GHz frequency shift radiating from the lunar crust, the Federal Communications Commission is authorized to deploy localized signal degradation under the guise of atmospheric interference. You trace the bureaucratic lineage of this order and find it leads directly to the desk of the Director of Central Intelligence in November of 1971, less than 4 months after the Apollo crew returned. This means the infrastructure for a global information blackout regarding the moon has been active, operational, and funded by your tax dollars for over half a century. The physical reality of what the crew encountered becomes even more disturbing when you examine the declassified biomedical telemetry charts attached to the end of the file. The graphs indicate that during the precise 90 seconds of the communication blackout, the oxygen consumption rates of all 3 astronauts dropped by exactly 42%. While their cognitive processing speeds spiked beyond human baselines. You realize this is not the physiological profile of a human body suffering from panic or sensory deprivation. This is the signature of a biological system undergoing an external data overwrite. The document notes that when the command module emerged from the lunar far side, the crew spent the first 12 minutes of the voice check-in speaking in a synchronized cadence that the onboard computers failed to recognize as English. Think about the sheer scale of the deception required to keep this secret from leaking into the public domain through thousands of independent laboratory sensors worldwide. The file provides the answer by detailing how the National Reconnaissance Office utilized a network of atmospheric dispersion satellites to create a permanent electromagnetic distortion layer around the Earth's upper ionosphere. This distortion layer serves as a cosmic mirror, bouncing the specific frequencies emitted by the lunar anomaly back into deep space before they can be intercepted by ground-based amateur telescopes. You are living inside an artificial informational bubble, an engineered reality where the sky you look at every night is effectively a managed projection designed to keep you blind to the truth. What happens to your sense of security when you realize that the primary mandate of the modern intelligence community is not to protect you from foreign adversaries, but to manage your ignorance regarding the cosmos? The file concludes with a series of predictive models generated by the agency's earliest predictive algorithms, projecting that public exposure of the lunar signal would lead to a total breakdown of religious institutions within 72 hours. It becomes clear that the classification of UAP N69 was never a tactical decision made to protect military secrets. It was an act of civilizational preservation executed by a small group of men who decided you were not ready. The question that remains, the one that should keep you awake tonight, is whether they are still protecting us, or if they are simply managing our transition. You turn away from the monitor, the weight of the data pressing down on you like a physical force as you realize the final horrifying truth hidden between the lines of the report. The lunar signal did not originate from an external star system or a long-dead race of cosmic explorers. The telemetry calculations show the source is moving dynamically within the moon's core. The moon is not an inert satellite orbiting a blue planet, but a highly calibrated computational system that has been monitoring the biological evolution of Earth since the very beginning. As you close the digital file and watch your screen fade to black, you are left with a terrifying piece of advice that will alter your perception forever. Stop looking at the stars for signs of life, because the watchtower is already behind us.